in for the past few minutes and those who have just joined us. This is the first public meeting for the Kingston Terrace Master Plan, which you have known by different names over the years, as an urban reserve area, as Beef Bend South, and now referred to for this process as Kingston Terrace. Mayor Gibson, would you like to say any words as we kick off the meeting?
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us. First of all, this is very important to our overall community. We're in this together. We need to work through this process together. And I have to keep reminding everybody that this is part of the process for figuring out how to do this expansion with the most forethought. And we have some great members of this team, our consultants who are working with us, our staff, who are putting a lot of energy in trying to do the best possible that they can to make this the best possible community of the future. And your participation is much appreciated and absolutely necessary. And I've been looking forward to this. So thank you for joining us. And this is the beginning of the process. So we look forward to a lot more conversation and your input. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mayor Gibson. I just want to make one more announcement that if we have any Spanish speakers in the meeting tonight, to let us know. You can do so through the question and answer function by raising your hand, or I think those would be the two main ways. And we have a Spanish interpreter in the meeting who can provide that service if we have anyone who needs it. A few more introductions before we get started. You can go back a few more slides, Anais. My name's Steve Faust with 3J Consulting. We are happy to be leading the consultant team for this master plan process. With me is my colleague, Anais Mate. She's going to be running the slideshow tonight. And also with us from the city of King City are Mike Weston and Keith Leiden. I don't know if you want to say anything. No, a wave is enough. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry. If you could go back for just 1 minute, Anais, before we talk about the agenda, I would just, we must have a different version of the PowerPoint. I just wanted to note that if you go to kingcitymasterplan.com, that is where you can find all the project information you might be looking for. You also can visit the online open house that we've had up and running for a few weeks now, and will run throughout the month of March. And we have that online open house is available in both English and Spanish. Okay, now let's go to the agenda. So we're going to touch on a number of things tonight. We're going to start with a project overview and then move into the process for this project, our public involvement plan and the elements of our public involvement plan. Then we'll talk about existing and planned conditions in the area. And then finally, opportunities and challenges. And at the end of the, during that opportunities and challenges section of the meeting, we'll have opportunity for you to use that question and answer function to provide your comments and ask questions. Then we'll finish with next steps before we wrap up. I see that there was a question about whether or not we can see you. This meeting is in a webinar format, so you can see the 5 or 6 of us, but we cannot see you. But we will communicate with you through that question and answer function when we get to that point of the meeting, so you can ask questions or provide comments through that function. And then as needed, we can even unmute people to allow people to ask questions or give comments live. But we use the webinar function because it's the easiest to facilitate such a large group. Okay, Anais, let's go to the next slide. Okay, project overview. So as many of you are aware, the City of King City completed the concept plan for Urban Reserve Area 6D in 2018, and that ultimately led to metro approval and or to approval in general, and Metro bringing this area into the urban growth boundary. This master plan process is intended to refine that concept plan to provide additional detail on that master plan. Let's go to the next slide. That you can see the area in red is the study area just to the west of King City city limits, with and being bordered by Beef Bend Road to the north, Roy Rogers Road to the west, and the Tualatin River, primarily the Tualatin River to the south. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the project process. So as I mentioned, the concept plan for this area was approved in 2018, and that included a look at baseline conditions in the area, the community vision, and preliminary design considerations. Now, this master plan process is going to build on that concept plan and provide additional development details, and really look at how to implement the vision that was established in the concept plan. Some of the outcomes of this master plan process will include comprehensive plan and community development code amendments. And then people should also be aware of other projects that influence this one. One is the King City Transportation System Plan. That planning process is underway. Maybe someone, Mike or someone could post if there's a I know there's a website, but I don't know the exact URL for that. That maybe could be posted in our Q&A. But the King City Transportation System Plan is certainly influences the master plan process, and that project is underway and expects to wrap up, I believe, midsummer, and then information from that process will be incorporated into this one. Mike, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say that the TSP is having, I believe, another open house in April, perhaps toward the end of April. And the other thing is, I can't figure out how to add that to the question and answer.
Okay.
You'll have to do it on your end, I think.
Okay. Is it an easy URL that you can just read to folks right now?
Sure, it's kingcitytsp.org. So www.kingcitytsp, all one word, .org.
Perfect.
And that should get you over there.
Thank you, Mike. The other project that we are watching closely and considering as we move through this process is one that the city of Tigard is doing for the River Terrace planning area that's just north of our study area, just north of Beef Bend Road. So naturally, there are some implications in terms of roads, in terms of infrastructure provision, and community design, in terms of making sure these two expansion areas work well together. So we're watching that process closely, and in fact, have representatives of the city of Tigard on some of our advisory committees, and I believe vice versa for their planning process. All right, let's go to the next slide. So this project, the Kingston Terrace Master Plan project, began in the fall of 2020, or at least that's when we officially started our work. And really, at the beginning, we were doing things. Our focus was studying existing conditions, getting our public involvement, basic public involvement materials together, and the advisory committees together. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. We finished the draft existing condition study late last fall, and then have spent the beginning of this winter, these last few months, gearing up for this public engagement program. And that's where we are tonight, at the beginning of winter 2021 and community meeting number 1. You can see that this project is expected to extend all the way into December of 2021. So this is, I think, all in all, about a 15-month process or so. And you can see there's plans for 2 community meetings, but there will be other opportunities to participate throughout the process. But this is the first of two of the larger community engagement efforts that we'll have throughout the process. Go ahead to the next slide. public involvement. And I will say, I see that questions are coming in on the Q&A, and if other folks can answer those, that's great. And if not, I mean, my plan is to get to those during the Q&A session, but feel free to enter those at any time. Objectives, public involvement objectives. One is to inform the community with timely, transparent, and accurate information. 2, to educate community members about planning and decision-making processes. 3, engage the community through early, broad-based, and ongoing opportunities. 4, strive for community consensus. 5, make a focused effort to engage historically marginalized populations. And 6, coordinate and cooperate with agency and jurisdiction partners. So I'll explain some of the elements of our community engagement plan that hopefully move us toward achieving those objectives. Next slide. So we took some time at the very beginning of this process to identify a broad swath of potential stakeholders that we want to engage throughout the process. And you'll see that all of the groups that are identified on the next 2 pages that we could find contact information for have been contacted about the online open house and this meeting this evening. So that's I think we have 2 pages of these stakeholder groups. And if there are any groups that you don't see on any of these 2 pages, we would love to hear from you what those groups are, so that as we go forward, we make sure to get them on our list and we're engaging as many groups as possible. Next slide. So in terms of the community engagement activities and tools that we're using for this process, we have a stakeholder advisory committee, and I'll share the membership of that group in just a moment. And the same with our technical advisory committee. Oh, can you go? Yep, right there. Those groups each have met once so far, just in January and February. We're in the process of conducting stakeholder interviews and as needed focus groups with any key organizations, businesses, community members to get to better understand the issues as best we can. We've conducted 1 planning commission and 1 city council briefing thus far. This is the first of our public workshops. And as I mentioned, there's an online open house with a community survey where you can get, that we've established the meeting tonight in the online open house that you can find on the project website. We, as you noted earlier, we did have Spanish translation available. It doesn't look like we have anyone taking advantage of that tonight, but the online open house also is available in Spanish. And then we are in the process of bringing on some capacity to do Korean translation and interpretation upon request. Social media and the project website and print materials are all methods of communication that we're going to use throughout the process. This probably doesn't cover everything, but these are the main engagement activities and tools that were outlined in the public involvement plan. Here are the members of our stakeholder advisory committee. I think there's about 20 people, and these members were selected to represent a range of interests and neighborhoods throughout King City and the expansion area. So not only were we focused on representing different interests, but also making sure that we had people from all over the entire geography of the study area, and then of course folks from King City proper as well. Next slide. Here is our technical advisory committee, which consists of partner agencies at the local and regional levels and state levels, as well as other key organizations with key interests in this project. And again, those 2 groups each have met once so far. Next slide. All right, before I move any further, I'm going to pause and just see if I can answer some of these questions. One question, will this project set us, okay, I'll get back to your question, Dennis. Ron, I apologize. That's probably an old slide that I didn't update. Ron Johnson, a member of our stakeholder advisory committee, but we weren't able to contact him till a little bit late. So I'm sorry, Ron. You are definitely on the committee. We just I didn't update that slide. My apologies.
And Steve, if you want to look over the ones I already answered and
Okay.
verify that.
Let's see here.
As far as I know, we haven't made any changes to anything yet because we haven't even got our preferred alternatives yet from the TSP. So we're still kind of like in an evaluation pattern right now.
Yeah, I'm seeing a question about difficulty figuring out how to access the link for tonight's meeting. I apologize for that. We put it up on the project website. I hope that was our hopes with that was that would be an easy way to do it. We didn't have the link ready when the postcard went out. So, but the link I believe was included with some of the social media and other advertisements. But I apologize. We'll make sure to put it on the landing page of the website next time. Thanks for that. We'll try to figure out a way, Gordon, to post the TSP website. I will have the King City master plan link. We'll put that up at the end. What changes have you made to any of your plans given the concern from Rivermead? Yeah, Mike, I agree. No, we're just starting to collect feedback right now. So, and we haven't made any plans yet. We're really just starting to, we've documented existing conditions, which I'll go over in just a moment, and are now conducting our community engagement as we begin the process. Okay, I think some of these other questions, I see, Mike, you've answered some of them, but let me go through the existing conditions and then we'll revisit those questions. Let's go ahead to the next slide. So the 2018 concept plan established some information, including a vision and 4 frameworks. And I'll just review those quickly. So the vision for this Kingston Terrace master plan area is for a vibrant, walkable, and complete community where everyday needs are easily accessible. Housing choice and affordability for current and future residents is available. There's safe, efficient, convenient, and reliable transportation choices to enhance connectivity and minimize automobile dependency. Protection of environmentally sensitive lands and retention of healthy ecosystems, and the efficient and equitable provision of infrastructure and associated costs. So let's go ahead to the next slide, Anise, and we'll go through the 4 frameworks that were established in the concept plan. And the first is natural systems. The vision for natural systems is that the community envisions an area with a mix of uses in harmony with environmentally sensitive lands and the Tualatin River. The goals, protecting the Tualatin River, sensitive wildlife habitat, and other natural systems, reducing runoff and healing erosion, and integrating green spaces and wetlands into the developed areas. And then in terms of our existing condition study, some of the key findings, as you know, this will not be a surprise to many of you, but the area is moderately sloped and it generally drains from north to south. Most of the drainage corridors, and we have, I believe, 5 in the area, are believed to be in an advanced stage of degradation. So that's something we're paying close attention to. The recommended strategy in looking at stormwater is to make use of regional stormwater facilities. And that's something that we'll continue to discuss within this project and also, you know, with the city of Tigard. And then the consolidation of regional stormwater facilities to serve River Terrace, Tigard River Terrace, and our planning area should be considered, but are going to require further coordination. And that's something that we're working on. Next slide. Let me grab my notes here. So of note in this area, we have several natural resources and environmental protection considerations. One is streams and wetlands. We've done a preliminary review through, there were some site visits and aerial photo review and GIS mapping. We know there's 6 streams and several small wetlands in the master plan area. If clean water services standards are adopted, there will be buffers of that range from closer to 15 feet to hundreds of feet for the Tualatin River itself. But each of these drainages will have a buffer that just depends on the size of the drainage area and the slope adjacent to the resource. In addition, it's likely that Clean Water Services will implement standards to address stormwater flow management. One method for detention management could allow for the use of the stream channel to help maintain natural stream functions rather than using upland areas. But we're very early in the planning process and are kind of working actively on looking closer at these different stream corridors and how we can meet those goals of restoring and enhancing them as best we can. Floodplains, the areas adjacent to the Tualatin River generally contain mapped 100-year floodplain boundaries. West of Southwest Elsner Road are several areas of mapped floodplain. There will be substantial restrictions related to development in floodplain areas, and a more detailed hydraulic analysis could be required. We'll be refining these floodplain areas as time goes on. In addition to current floodplain development standards, there's the potential for revised development codes and floodplain impact mitigation. We'll be considering those as well. New development codes would be generally more restrictive than current floodplain development standards and can require additional habitat restoration activities. So we're just getting started and documenting what's there, and then how those are treated will be part of the next steps in the process. So we also are well aware that there are conservation easements and cultural resources in the area. There's a property owned by the Bankston Family Trust that has a conservation easement on it with Three Rivers Conservancy and Columbia Land Trust, I believe. That mandates some restrictions on the property, and we'll be working with those property owners to take a close look at that as we look at the possibility of trails and where potential roads might be located and things of that nature. Also with cultural resources, there is the Gustav Pleath House along Beef Bend Road that consists of a house and several outbuildings, and we might need to coordinate with SHPO in regards to that house. In addition, the location is in the Tualatin River bottomlands, and along the river there's a high probability of other cultural resources associated with Native peoples and Euro-American peoples. And so we are in the process of working with Metro to reach out to the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and potentially other tribes. So we're in the process of making those connections. Okay, that was the natural systems framework. The next framework is land use. So the community imagines a range of housing types to support inclusive and diverse neighborhoods. Residential areas are supported by commercial and civic amenities and connections to the wider King City community and neighboring River Terrace area. A gradient of density creates 4 distinct neighborhoods, and we'll show an image of those neighborhoods in just a moment. Goals are to provide a mix of housing to accommodate a wide range of household types, incomes, and needs. Create a new mixed-use area with neighborhood scale and character, and allow for gentle transitions between rural and urban development. Next slide. So the concept plan established in our master plan existing conditions study confirmed that about 3,500 dwelling units can be accommodated in the 4 neighborhoods, which right now are just called the Main Street Town Center, the Beef Bend neighborhood, the Central neighborhood, and the Rural Character neighborhood. And that really will allow for a spectrum of housing types with a focus on middle housing types. And for those who aren't aware, recent legislation, House Bill 2001 in Oregon, requires that duplexes be allowed on all lots in single family detached zones. So any place you can put a single family detached home, you can also put a duplex. And then other middle housing types, which include triplexes, quadplexes, townhomes, and cottage clusters are to be allowed in all areas that allow single family homes. And I'm not exactly sure about the definition of how that is determined, but that is based on House Bill 2001, recent Oregon legislation. And here is the image I was talking about earlier that shows on the far west, you can see the Main Street Town Center. And I'll note that just to the south of that, also an employment area for future jobs. The Beef Bend neighborhood running east-west along Beef Bend Road, the Central neighborhood, and then far to the east, just west of the city limits, is the rural character neighborhood. So you can see there's that gradient of density and intensity that goes from east to west, becoming increasing intensity as you head west. So in terms of land use, in addition to housing, there's projected commercial development by 2045 is for 42,000 to 86,000 square feet of commercial area in that town center. But it's important to note that commercial development is not expected for at least 10 years or until significant residential activity occurs within the master plan area. So we're thinking a lot about how do we plan for a commercial area that's going to come later after a significant amount of residential needs to be built first. In terms of the town center, there's greater market potential for a town center that's located in an area with good visibility and access from a high volume roadway. So we're very thoughtful about where that town center will be located, at least the commercial aspect of it relative to Beef Bend Road and Roy Rogers Road and River Terrace Boulevard. The next bullet just says you have lower market potential if you don't have that visibility. And then finally, there's a projection of 84 to 172 jobs in that employment area. And a note that adding new public facilities would increase job growth beyond the forecast of 275 jobs. So there's 84 to 172, and it could go beyond. Next slide. Okay, so that was land use, and now we'll move on to the mobility framework. Go ahead. So the community envisions that users of a variety of transportation modes will be safely connected to and throughout the area by a new internal network of streets and paths. The goals are to provide a complete network of streets and path types, to connect the transportation network, support all modes of transportation, and create a complementary, walkable urban environment to support the provision of viable transit service. And just a few notes, our plan really is looking at all types of mobility, including, for those who are familiar with the term micro mobility, things like golf carts and other newer transportation and transit options. And then also have been really looking at Beef Bend Road and how that road can be not a divider, but a bridge between the King City expansion area and the Tigard expansion area. You see a little image there of one of the concepts of a parkway as a way to bridge those two areas together. Next slide. So as I mentioned, this plan envisions a full range of street and path types that would be used based on the context. It's called context sensitive design. So you can, won't read through all of the streets there, but you can see a variety of streets that would be used based on the context of the area. Is it a more commercial area? Is it a more residential area? Here you can see how nature can be integrated as well. So a variety of street types to choose from. And some key transportation challenges. East-west alignment of Beef Bend Road is still somewhat of an unknown. Looking at meeting landowner needs and expectations, working around the Bankston Conservation Easement, looking at regional trail connections for the west side and Tualatin River connections. North-south alignment of and connections to River Terrace are something we're thinking a lot about. And again, that connection across Beef Bend Road, making that a bridge between the communities and not a divider. And then urban design objectives like streets that suit urban design, that suit our urban design objectives while meeting transportation and safety needs and goals. So trying to balance the feel and livability of the community with road requirements that come from the county and state. Okay. This is a map from the concept plan, and it's not final by any means. It just showed some a preliminary look at how potential road alignments. You can see Beef Bend. There's kind of 2 road alignments to the north there, and also consideration of how there might be a secondary east-west connection through the community. A lot to still figure out there. Public utilities and services, the 4th framework. Infrastructure development in the area will align with the gradient of density that we showed earlier from east to west, and integrate stormwater management and mitigation throughout. That's the first of the goals. Again, reducing runoff and healing erosion, and using best practices for stormwater management and mitigation. The city of Tigard will provide potable water service to King City. Tigard's water supply facilities are adequate to supply that water through 2050 to this area. The recommended strategy includes main extensions and increased storage capacity. So a lot of infrastructure work to be done. Clean water services regional facilities are adequately sized to receive and treat wastewater generated from full build out of the plan. A new local collector system is going to be required to convey wastewater into the clean water services system. It may require some upsizing and some new sewers in King City to serve existing and future development north of Beef Bend Road. And then an alternative regional strategy may include relocating the existing Bull Mountain pump station. Again, that is yet to be determined. Okay, opportunities and challenges. Natural system. We went through the natural systems, the land use, the mobility, and the public utilities and services. I'm just going to go over a few more items, and then we'll dive into more questions and comments from all of you and spend the rest of our time doing that. So as we go forward and start to develop alternative land use and transportation plans for the area, so some of the things that we know that we need to be sensitive to the Tualatin River and surrounding natural areas, that there's at least 318 developable acres. We think as those natural areas are further defined, there's going to be more than that, but we think as a baseline, there's at least 318 developable acres. We can accommodate about 50,000 square feet of commercial uses within the 10 to 20-year horizon. We can accommodate those 3,500 dwelling units within the 4 distinct neighborhoods. We intend to locate higher density residential near transit, which also transit will be located near that town center. So that's where the transit routes will be, where there's more people. We're going to look to provide a spectrum or allow a spectrum of housing types. And again, that's by design from the concept plan, but also now by state law. Looking at perpendicular crossings at the narrowest portion of those ravines where ravines have to be crossed, and then looking to pedestrian and bike network connectivity. Then there's some things that we don't know, and we'll be figuring out through the course of the project. Go ahead. Where exactly, we know the town center is going to be located on the west end of town, but where is the exact location and what is its orientation relative to the Beef Bend Road, Roy Rogers Road, and River Terrace Boulevard? That remains to be determined. East-west connections, both the final route of Beef Bend Road as well as a potential secondary east-west connector to be determined. North-south transit connections. We don't know exactly if transit will be coming down Beef Bend Road or River Terrace Road, so that is to be determined. Ravine crossings, how many will need to be crossed, and will it be by bridge or culvert? future development around the Bankston property and airfield areas, that remains to be seen of how that will exactly play out. Local street alignments have yet to be determined, drainage areas and topography, and then also gravity pipelines across those drainages. What are those alignments going to be for sewer? So with that, I know that Mike has already been answering questions. So Mike, do you want to let me know where we're at in terms of questions and comments, and I can try to get caught up here?
Sure, I'm working on why are you proposing a major roadway through conservation property? So by major roadway, the only roadways we have that I would consider major or arterial are Beef Bend and Roy Rogers. I assume this person's talking about Fisher Road. That would be considered a local road, and we don't know what the alignment is of that right now. So that's the answer that I was putting up at the moment. We
are looking to provide a secondary connection, but the exact route of that connection is unknown at this time.
Right. And then the last one I have from Mr. Russell, have we taken any tours? Mr. Johnson, I believe, asked a similar question earlier. Yes, we have taken tours of the area. We have walked through and down that way. We've seen aerials and photographs of the Bankston property, but no, we haven't walked it. So I should answer that. And go ahead, Steve, you want to see? There was
I'll answer
about,
a few.
What's
I can answer a few. I mean, I see Mr. Russell's question about, well, I know, like you said, you and counselors have, and I would say that some of our consultant team has toured parts of the area and some have not. So we have kind of differing levels of familiarity, but a lot of our team worked on the concept plan and has some familiarity from there. I think previously, Mike, we had a question from Carl that you said that I would talk about. So let's see, I have a few questions related to the concept plan and master plan specific to the transportation and sewer system option costs provided in the concept plan and steps to update in the master plan as discussed in the concept plan. I could give those live at the end. So let me go ahead and see if I can figure out how to let you ask those questions, Carl. And that might make it a little easier since it sounds like you have several. Carl, I think you can talk if you want to go ahead and ask your questions.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I might not have phrased that quite right. It's probably not a lot of questions. It's just a lot of subparts to the question to get through so that you can answer it at the end. So probably not a lot of questions to answer, but I need to get through the parts to kind of set it up.
Okay.
So I'll start with that. For background, I'm a registered professional civil engineer, 48 years of experience. I worked at ODOT and did bridge design and cost estimating in my early career. In looking at the concept plan, it shows that the west end of Kingston Terrace will use a pump station for the sewer system because of the topography. The concept plan said that the master plan would develop or conduct additional design for many of the items, including the transportation system and the sewer system. In the concept plan, option 1 was more gravity system. Option 2 had sub-districts with pumping systems. The costs developed in that, there's 5 drainages, but it looked like it was just the western 4 drainages that were going to make 3 sub-districts. And they had a cost in there for the 3 sub-districts to be pump systems of $2.5 million. So I went out and looked today at the closest crossing, the first crossing here, and did some laser measurements out there and did a cost estimate for that bridge. And I don't see any way you can get shorter than 400 feet without doing a lot of fill in that conservation easement. Whether you do the alignment on the additional roadway or rotate it to the north. Because the topography, it doesn't shorten the length. So there's not really an optimum alignment as far as cost. But if you're going to do 2 lanes, 2 sidewalks, and I didn't include a bike lane, which probably would increase the cost. But I got $3.8 million for that crossing using 2016 data from U.S. Department of Transportation and the Federal Highways. Today, you know, by the time it's built or whatever, it's probably going to push over 4 million. So from 3.8 to slightly over 4 million. I'll also say that when I discussed this subject at the CPO meeting a while back, and my original thought was it's going to be at least 2 million. Roy Rogers, the Washington County Commissioner, who has a transportation background, said he thought that was half what it would be. So he was thinking 4 million. And based on what I went out and did today with the laser, I would agree it's going to be at least $4 million. So that's for one crossing. So there's some complications with the site that didn't work into that estimate. That's just a generic cost. So if all four of those 5s are similar lengths based on the topography and the mapping I've seen. So if you've got $4 million bridges so that you can achieve what some people say is going to be a more cost-effective gravity system, and option 2 in the concept plan said that you can have subsystems with a pump for 2.5 million. It really begs the question, why isn't somebody looking at these costs closely? Because it appears that once they did, they'd find that all the other issues that have been raised would be put aside based on cost and come up with that in this phase in the master plan, that option 2 in the concept plan actually provides fewer issues and is at a much lower cost.
Thanks, Carl. I'll say quickly that, as far as this process goes, we're not to that point yet. We've documented existing conditions, and the next step is going to be to dive into those different alternatives and look closely at the costs. So you're kind of a step ahead, but I appreciate you giving us some things to consider as we move on to the next steps. Mike, did you have anything to add to that?
I'm trying to answer some of these other questions in the chat window, and it's hard to follow both. But
okay. Yeah, and Carl, I know we're scheduled to talk, and I can certainly put you in touch with some of our engineers who are a little bit more familiar with those details. But my short answer, I appreciate that comment. We'll note that and take that into consideration as we move to our next step. But we really haven't gotten to the point of looking at options. We're just, we have documented existing conditions, studied the concept plan, and reaching out to all of you in terms of the vision and those frameworks, and kind of getting some confirmation on those things before we move into a deep dive on our alternative ways to develop and serve the area. And certainly part of that is what phasing and costs would look like.
I think,
Steve, this is Keith Lydon. Could you just also, for Carl's benefit, give him an overview of who else is on the consulting team and what other people we have?
Yeah, thank you for that, Keith. Also on the team is Herbsworks. They were the lead consultant for the concept plan. They are an urban design firm that's really leading our design team. DEA, which is helping us both with landscape architecture, as well as we have some environmental planners and structural engineers to help look at those sensitive areas as well as potential crossings. We have FCS Group that's helping us with, that helped with the market analysis, and is also will be helping with how to pay for these infrastructure improvements, and yeah, how to pay for the plans. So funding options and helping us with phasing as well. And I feel like I'm missing someone. And SCJ Alliance, who also worked on the concept plan and is going to help us look at mobility and transportation planning for the area. And then I would say, in addition, the city's contract engineering firm is Murray Smith. And so they are very familiar with water, sewer, stormwater conditions in King City, and I believe they work in Tigard as well. So that's really beneficial in terms of planning that infrastructure. Mayor Gibson, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I was just making sure that Keith got a chance to speak because I knew.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Mike, how are we doing in the chat, in the question and answer room?
There's one question here about other connections through Edgewater. It's probably easier if I answer this like in person instead of trying to type up a complete answer.
Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line is that you have to figure out how to diffuse the traffic. If you dump it all onto one or two main arterials, those arterials fail. So the idea or concept is to build on a grid and allow that traffic to diffuse over a larger area and reduce the impacts on one specific neighborhood, community, or roadway. As we look at alternatives, there's only a couple alternatives of roads that actually go through and connect. There's, I think it's Othello that comes down and then turns into Macbeth. And that area is very small. That roadway is not made to handle anything. There's Fisher Road, which in its current alignment is about 34 feet wide, 35 feet wide, which is probably a good 10 feet larger of pavement than what you'd see on Othello or Capulet. I forget what road that is. Keith, you might actually know off the top of your head. That road that comes in at the top there, just south of
Right.
Mountain View, Mobile Estates.
Yeah, I don't remember the width exactly, but since we have parking on one side, I would guess that it's probably 28 feet wide. That's our typical standard.
Right, and if
I think
anyone is
I think
familiar with
Fisher was
that,
built to 36 feet, I think.
yeah, if anyone is familiar with Macbeth, they understand like you can barely get one car down there. So it's not an ideal option. That's why I think Fisher in our concept planning kind of rose to the surface. But, you know, we're starting to talk about transportation stuff. This is a master plan, you know, so the transportation stuff is what we're dealing with in the transportation system planning effort.
All right, next question. It looks like the Tigard development has a commercial area lined up away from Roy Rogers, but with an outlet on Beef Bend. So this must be Tigard River Terrace. This doesn't align with our planned commercial area. Any thoughts on the impact alignment there? Or does it align and the maps aren't quite representative? I think, you know, we are aware, so you can't see my cursor, but the street that is just to the east of Beef Bend Road that's shown, or I'm sorry, of Roy Rogers Road. There you go. Thank you, Annie's. That is River Terrace Boulevard. And we are aware that at least in the concept planning phase, Tigard is planning for a commercial area just north of Beef Bend along that corridor. And as we mentioned, earlier, we're aware of that, and we're taking that into consideration as we figure out exactly where the location of, especially the commercial portion of the town center will be located. What you see here is conceptual from the concept plan. And I think some more work has to be done on our part to determine where exactly that town center area will be located. Mike, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's a good representation. I believe when we look at the Tigard concept plan, and for now it's a bubble plan essentially, there are some constraints there as well that I think the city of Tigard needs to work through, and I think they are working through that right now with Metro to get in this mid-cycle. And what they were talking about doing is sort of what they classify it as. I'm going to look over to Keith, but it's kind of a mix of like in-home office sort of mixed use along River Terrace Boulevard, which runs north-south from where our town center is up and around. And then they have another kind of community town center north of our area up where, there's a name that they have for their street, and Potomac, is it Potomac, I think, is the name of the street that they have coming across. And so they have a commercial core near Potomac that they're thinking of, and also along River Terrace Boulevard. And then there was a question that's been asked twice now about how we pay for the improvements. So I just want to put that out. Essentially, the improvements are paid through system development charges or supplemental fees. There's a number of ways and tools that cities have to apply these fees on the developments that are coming in to improve the infrastructure that's serving those areas. So that's kind of our plan for how we pay for that. And that'll be a function of this master plan as well as the transportation system plan for how we pay for those improvements that are being proposed or thought through.
Okay. Are you working with Washington County for any improvements on the north side of Beef Bend? Since I believe that is unincorporated county, such as turnarounds planned at specific intersections such as 150th, and what has been their response? So that area north of Beef Bend is what we mentioned in terms, or at least part of it is in Tigard's River Terrace planning area. So I know Mike and Keith have been working with the city of Tigard, looking at Beef Bend in general. The TSP is looking at Beef Bend Road alignment and design. I don't know, Mike, is there anything you can say specifically about what the correspondence has been with Washington County?
I think the correspondence with Washington County has actually been pretty positive about ways that we can develop Beef Bend to service our areas. Neither King City nor Tigard want to see Beef Bend turned into Highway 99 to the point where it's not passable or it creates some sort of barrier between neighborhoods. So with that in mind, we're trying to figure out how we can keep this community friendly and how we can develop connectivity north, south, east, west. In that, we're looking at ways that we can still get traffic to flow through without having too many barriers or stops along the way. So we've talked about possibly a traffic signal or a circle or traffic circle or a tri-oval at different locations. So far, I think Washington County is fairly open to that concept, but they're also limiting the number of connections we can have or what can connect to their arterial street. So those are that kind of sums up the gist of our conversations on Beef Bend. We've also talked about realigning Beef Bend to tie in to Tile Flat Road coming down through River Terrace. There's a number of conversations going on through the Washington County's urban reserve transportation systems, and that's one thing that they're taking a wide look at, region-wide transportation systems.
Mike, I'm going to ask some of these other questions a little bit out of order to make sure everyone's getting a chance. Gary Woods asked, will current landowners be forced to sell their land? No.
No, Gary, you won't be forced to sell your land. You can hang on to your land all you want. You know, some people decide to sell their land because the value is such that it makes it appealing. But no, we wouldn't force you to sell your land. At least the city wouldn't.
Yeah. Next question, might not the system development charges increase the cost of developed property, thus affecting the affordability of the property? Doesn't that negatively affect your goal of providing low-income housing? That was certainly discussed with our, I believe the stakeholder advisory committee talked about this quite a bit, that balance between providing the infrastructure that is needed for urban level development with a desire to provide affordable housing, and that there's a real tension there. It's a real challenge, and we're going to be looking at every avenue possible to try to provide that infrastructure while keeping costs, housing costs as low as possible. But that is a reality.
That's a big
Can
challenge.
can I comment on that? I just want to make clear that we are not talking about low-income housing. That's a very different thing. We're talking about affordable housing. So we need to keep that in that box that says we're trying to produce housing that meets a lot of different income levels, but we are not talking about low-income housing, which is an altogether different bucket of people who wouldn't normally be able to afford anything, and we're trying to accommodate that. That's not what that plan is.
I think, Mayor, you're referring to subsidized
Yes.
housing versus housing that's more affordable to a wider range of household incomes.
That's exactly right. Just let's be clear on that.
But there are other options that the city has to promote low-income housing, things of that nature. You look at SDC credits or methods in which the city could augment a development or things of that nature. There's partnerships through REACH and Habitat for Humanity and other things that the city can look into or help or look or dig into further to try to promote those things. But for the most part, we're trying to make sure that whatever we do pays for itself and does not burden or impact any of the current residents of King City.
There's a question about what's considered affordable and how do you control that. Again, there's various definitions of affordable based on percentage of median incomes in the area median incomes. So we often talk about what's affordable at different levels, at 60% of median income, at 80%, at 100 or 120%. And you're right, the city does not control that, but there's certainly things that the city can try to do to help keep those costs down. And we'll be looking into, what options we have available, as are, other cities throughout the region and throughout the entire state of Oregon right now, trying to find ways to encourage and facilitate the development of housing that's more affordable to a wider range of households and household incomes.
And historically, King City has done a pretty good job of keeping or maintaining a medium market housing type. We actually do a lot better than some of our surrounding towns, cities, and neighbors. And we kind of, when we proposed our concept plan, we were talking about ways that we could develop affordable housing by either some sort of inclusive zoning effort or through promoting cottage clusters or smaller lots or multiple units on a single lot, things of that nature where there's ownership, it's like attainable, you can get in those houses and they're not the $600,000 or $700,000 range, but the $200,000 to $400,000 range, which is still a lot. And we recognize that. Part of the problems that we see with the system development charges or the supplemental fees is that if you break it down a per share, it comes out to anywhere from 40 to 50. Heck, some are even up at $60,000 or $70,000 before you even get started. So that's a heavy lift for a developer or even a future homeowner to try to put into a housing piece and try to offload. So
there's a statement that the housing we're talking about will bring the value of homes down, and that current homeowners and the impacts on them should be taken into consideration. I think, again, we're talking about duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, townhomes, cottage clusters. The state actually did a lot of research before the passage of House Bill 2001. I think you could find a lot of information that would, and I'm not an expert, but I've seen a lot of information that would be counter to what this statement about housing value, that actually housing values are increased by denser development. But I'm not an expert there, but the plan is to develop this area from in that gradient from east to west, with the more rural character on the east end and the higher density development on the west end. So I don't know if anyone else has anything to add there. Okay. Let's see here. There's a comment that a grid of streets within the community could diffuse traffic and keep traffic to a dull roar on any individual road. Thanks for that comment. What happened to the proposed commercial / residential development on the northwest corner of Fisher Road and 131st?
I can try to address it as best I can. They got through planning commission approval. They still have their planning commission approval. I believe they've run into some financial constraints, and so they have not moved forward beyond that stage. We've heard from them a little bit here and there, but we haven't seen them move forward on anything yet.
Was there a traffic light being considered at that intersection, Mike?
Not right now. I think if there was like a traffic light or signalization that was considered in the concept plan, when we looked at the concept plan, like 20-year outlook, what would traffic look like 20 years from now? And I think SCJ Alliance had mentioned that a traffic signal or signalization of that intersection may be necessary in the future.
So has the traffic study been done on that?
That was part of our concept plan. It would be appendix, I want to say J in the concept plan.
That's on the city's website. Why is the more rural development on the east end next to the existing developed area? You can probably answer that better than I can, Mike.
There's more rural development on the east side because there are more private lots, more home sites that are owned by residents that are already divided up. So those areas tend to develop at a slower rate over a longer period of time, sometimes not at all. We still have large lots that are in, Southwest Portland, Tigard, Tualatin, other areas that still haven't developed to this day, even though they've been inside the urban growth boundary for some time. So we project that that area will be slow to develop. Sometimes generational turnover will bring those along. And when we think about our time frame here, it's not going to happen in 5 years. It's probably more like 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road. So this is a development plan that's to take place over the next 20 years, ideally. The areas to the west already are serviced by some pretty major thoroughfares with Roy Rogers and Beef Bend being in close proximity. It's got, when we look at market need or visibility, Roy Rogers being right there is a big draw. And so one, the open green space, 2, the visibility, 3, the desire to develop, all those promote toward developing town center or commercial center on the west end.
I'm going to go ahead and Carl's had his hand up, but I wanted to get some other folks in there. So I'm going to unmute you, Carl, and you can ask another question. Hopefully that works.
Yeah, I guess we could follow up later during the interview, but when I was looking up those consultants, I didn't see any that would have the experience to come up with the costs for the transportation side, specifically the bridges, so that early on in this master plan, you could start getting some numbers that might impact the plan rather than not having them at all. I'm worried that from this, even at the end, you still wouldn't have the numbers that you would need to make a good analysis.
Yeah, I think David Evans and Associates definitely has the capability. Like I said, there are structural folks on the process. And I would think that SCJ Alliance also would be able to provide costs in terms of whatever crossings are used. So I'm very confident, Carl, that we have the expertise and capability between our consultant team, between the members of our consultant team, that we have that capability. Okay, Mike, at one point, you, probably not tonight, but previously maybe said that, did you answer that question about forced annexation?
Yeah.
Okay.
We haven't forced any annexations to date, and hopefully we wouldn't change that stance. Sometimes needs dictate other things, but I don't see us changing policy or changing direction at this point.
I see a question about the nomenclature of Kingston Terrace. Mike, do you or Mayor Gibson want to talk about how that came about?
Sure. We've been tossing it around for a while now. We had King's Village, King's Estates. What do we have? We had some names like Versailles Terrace. Anyways, we've been tossing them around for a couple of years now, ever since we started the concept planning, and we've talked with consultants here and there about what direction we were going to make, and we just never really moved forward with any of the decisions. So I talked to the mayor over the last couple of weeks and months, even heck since Christmas really, and we've been tossing around like King's Village or Kingstown or something to that effect. Finally we took Kingstown and condensed it to make Kingston. And then went with, since we wanted to kind of coincide with our neighbors, since they're doing River Terrace, we went with Kingston's Terrace. So,
and also I want to add that first and foremost, we want to stay with a theme of original King City. We don't want to lose that identity. And Kingstown is the definition of Kingston, and it just makes it a little bit smoother. And it's really kind of honoring original King City at the same time and not losing that original identity.
Thank you both. Cities cannot annex via cherry stem, but only through contiguous annexation. How does the city propose moving forward with development, especially with the comment that the east end of the planning area will develop more slowly?
I can take a stab at this.
Okay. Okay.
There are enough interested property owners from 137th Street all the way out to Roy Rogers, so that it doesn't necessarily do a cherry stem. Cherry stem being a length of over like 1,000 feet. Most of the property owners or units along the way are closer to that, so that makes it pretty easy to move forward with an annexation that's not considered a cherry stem.
Are there any plans for redevelopment of the existing King City footprint? And how might that affect the overall city plan? I'm not sure if I don't quite understand that question.
I think Keith could probably answer this better than I could. The King City Plaza and Town Center that's all along 99W has already been kind of rezoned to allow redevelopment. So I'll hand that off to Keith and let him answer that.
As far as redevelopment in King City, I don't think we see much redevelopment occurring in the existing city because it's also relatively new. It started really in 1960, so the housing stock, the buildings are still all relatively new and in good shape, developed to high density that doesn't really lend itself to much redevelopment. We only have a few properties that are available for redevelopment. We did do a town center plan that involved our commercial area along 99W. That was adopted around 2015. And that does allow for redevelopment with more of a mixed use character because at least originally our limited commercial zone that applies to our commercial area along 99W did not allow residential development of any kind. We have since changed our zoning and our plan to allow for that. There's been a change in ownership at King City Plaza, and the new owner has at least expressed some interest in possibly redeveloping the center at some point and maybe introducing a residential component. At this point, it's just been talk, and I don't know when or if those folks would come forward, but we've at least made that a possibility. But that would be about the main redevelopment opportunity potentially in our existing city right now.
Thank you, Keith. We don't have any questions at the moment. I'm going to skip to next. Oh, Mike, you got something?
There's one on here. I don't know. Did we answer this? It's I was trying to put an answer up here really quick. It says, I understand the need for connectivity, but think you can do so without creating a boulevard for the purpose of moving traffic from one end to the other. Mm-hmm. Beef Bend should be the end-to-end connector or road of choice to leave the area. I tend to agree. Beef Bend should be the primary arterial running east-west. I believe that you can still develop with connectivity and build on a grid and provide connections internal for local traffic and those just trying to get to the destination. So I think that's part of what the preferred alternatives and things that are coming from our transportation crew here in the near future. I at least hope that they're coming up with some of those to give us some direction on that.
This is Keith Leiden. Also, I think to add one thing that's important is we're not envisioning that Fisher would be some sort of an alternate that people would take between Roy Rogers and 99W. It's really for internal circulation from neighborhood to neighborhood and that type of thing. So that if you live somewhere, say, east of Elsner Road, you don't have to go up to Beef Bend Road, then go west, then go to the town center. You could go to the town center directly by not getting on Beef Bend in the first place.
Thank you both. We've got three comments and questions here that I'm going to go through quickly, and then I'll go to next steps, and just so I can show everyone the next steps, and then we'll take more questions and comments until we run out of time or they stop. One person just wanted to restate that there's a number of people who live in Edgewater on the Tualatin that are very concerned about Fisher Road and potential impacts on existing homes and residents in the area, and as well as potential environmental impacts. And I appreciate that comment. We definitely hear you. And I think just by the very design of this gradient that you see on the screen right now, you can see that that's been taken into consideration to some degree. I would encourage you to continue to participate in this process and the TSP process. We're certainly aware of these concerns and share a lot of them in terms of wanting to make sure that we're thoughtful about how we provide infrastructure throughout the entire area. So thank you for that comment. A majority of the homeowners, thank you. It was voted on, so noted. Thank you. We've got a record of this Q&A chat just so everyone knows. The proposed acres for the community park and neighborhood parks are much smaller than community and neighborhood parks in Tigard and Tualatin. Based on the 3,500 new homes and up to 10,000 new residents, how were these formulations determined? I'd have to go back and take a look at the numbers on that. I don't know if Mike or Keith, if either of you are able to answer that any better than I am right off the cuff.
I forget what the calculation was, but I think I had it for one of the public meetings. I think it was like a CPO4K meeting that I had asked our consultants to pull that number out. But on top of just the planned parks, and there's 4 or 5 of them, I believe, that are improved planned parks that were in our concept plan. There was also like 200 acres of natural areas or conservation areas for pathways, walkways, parks, those sort of things. So I think when you look at the overall acreage of 528 acres, and you're taking 210 of those right off the top for parks and open spaces, natural resources, you're left with about 318, I think is what we boiled it down to. So it's kind of a scaled weight, but the other things to consider as well is that, and I know it's not going to happen right away, but on the other side of Roy Rogers, kind of kitty corner to our property, there's a chunk of property there off Lasich Lane that is designated for ballparks, football fields, soccer fields, and the like, from that the city of Tigard bought like 10 years, 15 years ago. When that area actually comes into the urban growth boundary is still to be determined, but when it does, that would be a large park adjacent to our area, as well as the fact that we're going to have connections across the river through the Heritage Pines and West Side Trail segment to provide a bridge over to the natural wildlife area across the river, as well as wildlife areas to the west as well. south and west as well. So.
Mayor Gibson, I saw too late that you had unmuted. Was there anything that you wanted to say that I didn't see?
No, I just made the comment that I made. I'm good for now. I might have something to do in closing.
Okay, thank you. Does the master plan allow for bike lanes on Beef Bend from Roy Rogers to 99? Recent work on Beef Bend has resulted in patchwork of these lanes, as well as repainting of turn lanes, etc. You know, I'm not working on the TSP, but I would assume that yes, that I mean, Mike, you can probably speak to it better than I can.
Well, it's a big push from Keith and I, and we are trying to hold our consultants' feet to the fire on, as well as Washington County, because, you know, Washington County has their atypical cross section that they want to pitch, and it doesn't necessarily fit what we want to do or what the city of Tigard wants to do. So we are trying to pitch for multi-use pathways that are separated from the roadway, that aren't necessarily curb tight, that give some protection for pedestrians and bicyclists traveling east, west, north, south. So we are looking into how we can connect those pathways and how we can provide that as an alternative mode of transportation. Keith, do you have anything to add on that?
Well, I would add that at least as far as Washington County is concerned, a minimum design standard for Beef Bend Road, if you improved it, would be to have bike lanes on the street. We're feeling that bike lanes on major streets don't get used very much because they're really not a very pleasant place to ride, and it's not a place where you want to be out there with your kid riding or anything. So we're really looking more seriously at some kind of a better situation with a separated route that parallels the street.
Thank you. Let's see here. Is Rivermead Park going to become a public park?
I don't believe we have any plans whatsoever to touch or deal with that. There's no plans to condemn it. There's no plans to consume it or take it over. King City does not have anything to do with that park at this point in time.
Mike, can you repeat what you said earlier about access to the wildlife refuge and a bridge? There might have been some misunderstanding of what that is exactly.
Okay, so the west side, if you haven't looked into it yet, I would encourage you to look into the West Side Trail. It is a trail that goes from Portland on the other side of 26 up over Skyline all the way down and follows these Bonneville and PG power lines all the way up and over Bull Mountain down to the other side, and goes right through our area from Beef Bend down to the Tualatin River. It crosses the Tualatin River and goes to an area called Heritage Pines. That's technically Tualatin area there. It also hits into the wildlife refuge on the other side of the river. So that pedestrian bridge would provide that sort of access across that way. And I believe that is a regional MSTIP and path. Well, it's a regional path through Metro. It's one of Metro's regional plans, as well as Washington counties.
All right. Annie, would you mind flipping down to next steps, and we'll go over that and then answer any other questions that we have as we wrap up here. So again, really encourage everyone to visit kingcitymasterplan.com. A lot of information, presentations from the Technical Advisory Committee and Stakeholder Advisory Committee meetings. I mentioned before, I don't think we have these posted there, but I know elsewhere on the King City website, you can probably access information from the briefings we did with Planning Commission and City Council. And most importantly, that's where you can access the online open house, where we provide a lot of the information about the vision for the area and the frameworks, and ask questions, both multiple choice questions for you to answer, as well as open-ended ones. So you can share, any thoughts that you have. We want to make sure that we had a balance of closed-ended questions and open-ended questions to make sure that you can share whatever questions and comments you have. We're in the process of conducting stakeholder interviews. We'll be doing that throughout the end of the month. And then our team will begin we'll take all that information and summarize it, and we'll post a summary of all the community engagement comments that we've received. We'll post that to the project website. We want to be as transparent as possible. And then our plan will start to develop alternative land use and transportation plans for the area. And then there'll be another round of advisory committee meetings and another opportunity to comment online towards the end of April and early May. So keep an eye out for that. And with that, let's go back to the questions here. We've got one that says, let's see here. Oh, can we answer? So there's a question about whether the questions we answered live will be added to the discussion record. We are recording this Zoom session, so what we can do is post the recording to our project website, and you'll be able to see them all there. So hopefully that answers that question. Looking at the website, you need to update some things like current city council members. That is probably not, that's the City of King City website. So Mike, note for you.
Yep, I got it.
Check on that. We've got a little bit of time left. I would encourage any other questions or comments that people want to ask at this time, or like I said, definitely visit that online open house as well.
Steve, I wonder if you could give a quick overview of what activities will be happening for the next public meeting that we're going to have. That's the same one as this. It's the second one of this format. What are we going to be covering on that one?
Sure. That's happening a little bit further out into the summer, into early summer. And that's where we're going to be wanting to get feedback from all of you on these alternative land use transportation plans, so we can move from some alternatives to a preferred plan that we will then take forward and will eventually go to Planning Commission and City Council for adoption in the fall and winter of 2021. And so we'll have another public meeting like this to present those and get feedback. Who knows? Maybe that'll be in person. We can all hope, right? That would be lovely. I would love to have that be an in-person meeting. But regardless, we'll also prepare another online open house so that people can participate in that way as well. Okay, a couple more comments here. Metro has appointed an oversight committee for regional. Oh, that went away.
Let me just kind of, sorry, I hit send, but I was responding to Greg. We are in discussions right now, ourselves, Tiger, Tualatin, Sherwood, because we went through a presentation on that bond and the allocation of those bonds, and there were no South County projects listed in that. So it was disappointing and discouraging for us. And so we've been trying to figure out a way where maybe we can raise some of our trail projects or park projects in prominence. So that's what we're working on, Greg. I responded to you personally, but the hope is that we can draw more attention to these trail systems and parks that we have in our area.
There's a note that Rivermead Community Park is owned by a corporation, which I think fits right in with what you said, Mike. Mm-hmm. Does the master plan number of 3,500 residential units include what is proposed for the corner of 131st and Fisher?
No, it does not.
It does not. So that's within current city limits?
Yeah.
Will survey results past and future be posted to the project website? Definitely. So at the end of March, we'll collect all the information that we've gathered. You can already find summaries of the advisory committee meetings on the project website, but we'll be summarizing all the comments that we received and questions and comments that we received tonight and that we received through the survey and the online open house and through our stakeholder interviews, and package all those up and make that available to everyone. Just a few minutes left. Our question and answer area is empty. Maybe Mayor Gibson, you said you might like to say a few words at the end of the meeting, so maybe now is a great opportunity to do that.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I'm encouraged by the number. I think the highest number I saw was plus 60, and that's encouraging to me. I think it's important for everybody to understand that this is a very intense process. There are a lot of decisions that need to be made. There are a lot of things that have to be decided on cost and all of those things. But at the same time, I encourage us as residents of King City to start thinking about what we want in this development, what we want in terms of, I saw one question that said, is there going to be a high-end restaurant when we do the new town center? And those are the kinds of things that we need to hear about. Those are the kinds of things that we have a vision of, is having a really nice location where people can go and relax and eat and shop. And those are the kinds of things, that part of the vision, we haven't been able to spend a whole lot of time talking about, because there are some legitimate concerns about the details of roadways and of course, Fisher Road. But there's much more to this than that. And we need people to start thinking about, what do I want in my city? And this is part of the ownership. And the ownership says that this is what I wish I had. I don't want to have to go necessarily to Lake Oswego or to Beaverton to shop at Trader Joe's, if that is a possibility for our future. And if there's a kind of restaurant that is appealing, can we attract it to King City? Those are the kinds of things that we need to be talking about. Those are the kinds of things that I encourage you all to start thinking about. And we're going to get there. And it may be painful at times, because we won't all see eye to eye on some things. But I'm encouraged. And I think the future is very bright for King City and the development called Kingston Terrace. So thank you guys for participating. We need more participation. We need to hear from you, and don't hesitate to make your comments and visit those websites. And we're constantly trying to do a better job of making it easier for you to engage and to be able to go directly to the information that you want, and to make your comments and to get more information. So I want to thank you. I think we're going to get there. And that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Mayor Gibson. Again, please visit the online open house. Hopefully you all received the postcard that was sent out. Encourage your friends and neighbors to participate. We'll be posting the results at the end of March, and you can keep your eye out for another opportunity to participate in probably late April or early May as we develop these alternatives. So thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and have a good evening.
Well done, Steve. Thank you very much. Mike and Keith, you guys did a great job. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks all the participants. Have a nice evening.